once again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today for the fourth in our deep dive series. My name is Clare Sears and I'm the Deputy Regional Director for the wider Europe region of the British Council. So this is the fourth in our deep dive series, which is part of our higher education dialogues, which we launched back in May last year, really as a direct response to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the global higher education sector. And since then, we've had over 5,000 representatives of higher education institutions from the UK and from around the region join with us to share concerns, ideas, knowledge, and look for solutions. In this deep dive series, we really aim to get a little bit more into the subject matter. And today's deep dive, we're going to be looking at exploring using technology to enhance employability. And the idea of these sessions is just continue to share ideas and knowledge, but also to have some real practical examples that can be applied back in your own institutions. And we're very lucky today to be joined by a panel of experts who have a huge wealth of experience and expertise amongst them, and also from around 100 participants from 8 different countries who also have a great wealth of knowledge and expertise. So to introduce our panelists, they are Martin Edmondson, CEO and founder of Gradcore, a social enterprise which focuses on transforming graduate recruitment and employability, and his colleague John Cusworth, who's Director of Partnerships also from Gradcore, who's going to be running a virtual assessment centre live exercise whilst we view other presentations. Vanessa Freeman, who's Director of Careers and Employability at City University of London, and Ali Orr, who's Head of Graduate Outcomes and Employability at Kingston and leads the Careers and Employability Service and Study Abroad teams there. So just before we get started, I'd like to cover a few ground rules. Please, could you keep your cameras off and keep your mute functions on? Please do ask questions, share ideas, comment in the chat bar, and please also use the like function if someone says something that you agree with or you think of a question as a particularly good one, or someone else has just pinched your question for you, and that will help us tackle the most pressing questions and comments when we come to the Q&A session. Today's session is going to last for around an hour and a half, and we will share recording and presentations with all attendees afterwards. And our colleague Simon is compiling a spotlight report as we go, which will be shared with you next week. So without further ado, I would like to invite Martin Edmondson from Gradcore to kick us off and look at our initial poll findings.
Great. Thank you very much, Claire. So I'm just going to start with sharing some slides with you in terms of the just giving a quick introduction to this topic. So just one moment while I get those ready. So hopefully everybody can see that. It's great to be here today, and we're partnering with the British Council on this sort of series of webinars, particularly with the employability strand of the HE Dialogues webinars, and so it's really good to be here and to contribute today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how universities are using technology to enhance and develop and deliver employability and careers work at the moment. My task really very briefly at the start here is just to kind of introduce a bit of context on this and to perhaps set the scene in terms of some of the overall trends. So just to explain who Gradcore are. So as Claire said, we're a social enterprise that works between the worlds of graduate recruitment and employability. So the people we work with are a mix of employers and universities. There's a sort of selection of some of them on the screen there, but we've also spent quite a bit of time working in the wider Europe region in a number of your countries, and it's really great to see, and I can see some familiar names and things amongst the delegates, so it's good to see you today. So in terms of technology and employability, obviously COVID and the pandemic has accelerated this trend considerably, and I know John's going to talk about this in more detail shortly, but I thought perhaps I could just give an overview that talked about perhaps 3 main areas in which technology is being used to deliver careers and employability in higher education and in universities. And those 3 areas really are in kind of infrastructure systems, in the use of mainstream platforms for careers delivery, and then finally in terms of the use of recruitment software for careers and employability delivery. So when I say infrastructure systems, what I mean there are systems that are dedicated to running the kind of core functions of what you might describe as a typical careers service. So, some kind of careers service software that runs everything from careers guidance to appointments to careers fairs to connecting with employers and advertising jobs. And there's a number of different systems out there. You can see some of the examples on the screen there. And they're particularly important, I think, at the moment in terms of providing, if you like, a central infrastructure. But most of those systems, come with a price tag and a cost, and perhaps are only really relevant when you kind of at a certain scale where you have a large scale kind of careers service. So in the short term, as Claire was saying in the introduction, people need really practical ways of using current tools to deliver employability. And perhaps what we're seeing a lot of at the moment, and certainly having the last year, is the use of platforms like Zoom and Teams, but also Eventbrite and Kahoot and things like that to deliver things like assessment centres, interviews, workshops, and everything around careers and employability, one-to-one careers guidance as well. And again, the other panelists are going to give some more detailed examples of where that's taken place. And then finally, the other category I think that people are using a lot of is recruitment software. So tools that were designed for large and small organizations to do hiring actually play a really helpful role when they're turned and used as a kind of employability development tool. So whether that's video interviews or psychometric tests or assessment center platforms, but also increasingly digital or virtual internship platforms, which enable companies, small and large companies, to take students or graduates onto an internship using a virtual platform to kind of manage and monitor and organize those internships, which is obviously particularly helpful at the moment when most of us are in some kind of lockdown or restricted kind of working pattern and working from home. So that's just a quick overview really of the sort of systems and things that I think are going into. And I'm going to hand over to John in a second to talk about them in a little bit more detail. I'm just trying to see the poll results so that I can give you a summary of what that has produced.
Yeah, the format changed a little bit, Martin, so you won't be able to see it in the chat box, but I can share my screen with you and tell you what we have received, and then you can comment on it. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. And here we are, Martin. I hope you and our audience can see it. So the majority have said it's between 1 to 5 staff members at their university who are solely focused on careers and employability, followed by 6 to 10 staff members. We do have a number of universities where they have 20 to 50 or even 50 plus. And well, we also have one university with no staff dedicated to careers and employability.
Thanks, Summer. And I think what that does is paint a really interesting picture, and one that we certainly see in the UK and across Europe, is that there's a real variability about this, and it often depends on whether the institution, I guess the particular university, is prepared to put real backing and investment in this area. We think it's obviously increasingly important that they do. And in the UK, for example, career services vary from perhaps the smallest being 2 or 3 people to the largest being around 130 or 140 staff dedicated to careers and employability. And we see a similar pattern across Europe where often it is just 1 or 2 people in universities having to kind of lead their careers function. But sometimes, a university will really perhaps back and invest in this area, and you will see a larger team. So it's really interesting to see that pattern. And thank you everyone for contributing to that poll. And feel free to keep contributing to the poll, I think, through the session, because obviously the more data on there, then perhaps a more rich picture will build up of the group. Okay, so I'll wrap up there and hand over to my colleague John Cusworth, also from Gradcore, who's going to talk a little bit more detail and a bit more examples about some of the, particularly what I was saying about recruitment software's use in delivery of careers and employability. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So thank you for that excellent introduction. Hi guys, my name's John Cusworth. I am a Partnerships Director at Gradcore, and as Martin said, I'm going to talk to you a bit about the increase in use of recruitment technology as part of the student journey, specifically focused on employability. So before the pandemic, universities were looking to diversify their approach from what you might regard to be traditional means of careers advice and guidance, and looking to increasingly move away from traditional one-to-one guidance interviews and approaches, looking to, where possible, embed employability within the curriculum more meaningfully and in an assessed way, and using increased technologies to inform student journeys, but also use them as a reference point and as a resource to support messages either in curriculum or within the career service, as Martin's indicated. Simultaneously, and in parallel, employers are also looking for more efficient ways of processing their talent pool, so assessing potentially thousands of talented graduates to identify them against their assessment frameworks, but also, whilst doing that, improve the quality of the experience that those candidates have, whilst also retaining that as a business they need it to work for them. So important to understand their context and what tools will be right for them. And these have included the increase in online testing as part of a recruitment process, and that's diversified very much from sort of the traditional psychometric to custom-made situational judgment tests, wholly immersive virtual reality environments requiring participants to have virtual reality headsets on. Asynchronous video interviewing, so the ability to record an interview for a job without the recruiter or any of the recruiting business's staff being present. And then virtual assessments, which is what we're going to demonstrate later this afternoon, whereby recruiters can literally run the exercises that they might have done in a face-to-face world wholly remotely, and all the benefits and challenges that presents for them. So that was pre-pandemic, and all the pandemic has really done is accelerated these trends, and especially thinking about now the video interview and the virtual assessments elements I was talking about. Universities are very increasingly keen to update and make sure that their students have an edge on others emerging from other competing universities, to give them a competitive advantage in what is, in a post-pandemic world, an ever more increasingly competitive graduate-led market, especially. In particular, video interviews and virtual assessment centres have been deployed within universities in a variety of ways, and I'm going to talk a bit about those now. So, standalone mock experiences. So a student might approach a career service and say, I have a virtual assessment centre next week. Do you have a mock one for me to try? So I understand the experience prior to it, experiencing it for real. As part of a structured skills development programme, so again, using video interviews and virtual assessment centres as a means through which to profile a student's competencies against an assessment framework, to understand where those development areas are, and then to make a tailored programme for each individual student to develop those skills against, as well as potentially including them as credit-bearing modules within selected courses. Again, looking at attribute and competency development and how that would be assessed, and using these tools to do that, much like a recruiter would if it was for a job. So let's talk about video interviews more specifically. So I've included a visualization on the right of this slide just to show you what it looks like from a recruiter's perspective. I think that chap's called Nathan Nichols is attempting a video interview there. And as a recruiter, all you need to do is click on that play button and review the response and assess it as well you might have done if it was face-to-face, except you're saved all that time of having to be present, and you can just do that completely in your own time. and 24/7 around the clock, as I'm about to talk about. So these first emerged, I guess, in the early 2010s. The technology was there previously, but perhaps a catch-all one-stop shop platform wasn't. And so the sort of killer application was developed around about 2010. It then, I guess, took about a couple of years in the UK to become mass adopted, and by 2015 over 65% of graduate recruiters have one in their process, and that's affirmed by the 2020 ISC recruitment survey. I've included the link to the Institute of Student Employers website there, because that is a very useful resource to have. And the main reasons why this technology has grown is employers have realized that this is cheaper, quicker, and gives a higher quality experience for the business and for the candidates. So there's very little downsides to why you wouldn't do a video interview instead of a face-to-face one as part of your recruitment process. So virtual assessment centres, very much the new normal, and now, because of the pandemic and the sort of social distancing and COVID safe workplaces we now have totally replaced face-to-face assessments in the UK. It's very impractical to do that in the current situation. And what we can say anecdotally, until there's some more robust research developed around it, is that recruiters are recognising there are substantial and significant savings on venues, travel, catering, business time, and also candidate time. And obviously in a COVID affected economy, cost savings are hard to argue with. And so much of the practice that we're going to talk about later on is likely to remain well and truly after the COVID affected period. And some of our clients are looking to further enhance their approach in the virtual assessment world, because they recognise that's where it's going to be moving forwards. Okay, and now on to the demonstration and the mock task. Very kindly, we've got 5 or 6 students from across the region joining us on the call today, and I'm now going to briefly introduce their task to them before they'll be whisked away to a breakout room to complete the task and then come back to us to present. So I'm just going to take a moment to stop presenting and just share with everybody the student brief. And so for delegates not participating in the presentation, this is for your interest only, unless of course you want to join them in the room and present alongside them. So I'm just going to share that link in the chat box now. That takes you to a Google Drive document. So if I could invite all my students who are on the call to open that, please. I'll give you a moment to do that. I'm also going to share the document on my screen so you can see it, and then I'm just going to literally introduce the task for everybody on the call before they are then taken away. So here is that document. Just see if I can do that again. There we go. Okay, so food and drinks packaging is an important part of modern life, but discarded packaging is harming our beaches, oceans and communities we live in. In fact, every year 8 million tonnes of plastic end up in our oceans. This global issue is becoming increasingly urgent, and whilst both governments and organisations are taking action, there is still a lot that can be done. You'll now be shown a short video to highlight the problem. So I'm just going to share that video now. Remembering to include computer sound so you can hear the audio. And here it is.
3,000 miles from the mainland, a remote paradise that's become a rubbish dump. Its beaches are now more densely polluted with plastic than anywhere else on Earth. Henderson Island is home only to South Pacific seabirds and marine wildlife. And with no human inhabitants, this should be a pristine haven. But an international team of researchers who visited and studied the island calculated that 17 tons of our litter, washed or dumped into rivers and oceans, have floated here over decades. Saw the devastation up close.
We looked across the beaches in a variety of different plots and counted the pieces of plastic on the surface and down to about 10 centimeters. And from that, we were able to extrapolate the area of the beaches. And that's how we came up with our estimate of about 38 million pieces on the island. And it's really shocking because as you step along the beach, I mean, the plastic is absolutely everywhere. No place is without it.
So passionate about helping to tackle this worldwide problem, your team has entered a competition to win funding to introduce a new initiative aiming to reduce plastic pollution. You've been asked to give a 15-minute presentation to the judging panel on your proposed initiative. You may wish to consider the problem at an individual, business and/or wider community level. However, your proposal can cover anything that you think is important. This is an extremely popular competition and your proposed initiative will need to stand out from the crowd in order to win the funding. The panel is particularly interested in new and creative ways of tackling the problem of plastic pollution, strongly encouraging people to change their behaviour, so be open-minded and use your imagination. You have 30 minutes to work together as on the team to develop your pitch and prepare your presentation to the judging panel. Every member of your team should aim to present at least 2 minutes of the content. The judging panel will then ask some questions you should consider what some of these may be in advance. Okay, Nicola, feel free to ask the students to join the breakout room. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks ever so much, John. So whilst we hear from our next two speakers and have a Q&A, our volunteer students will be working on this task in real time, and then we will welcome them back in half an hour's time to hear how they got on. Great. So whilst they're busy doing that, could we ask Vanessa Freeman for our next speaker, please?
Thank you, and thanks for having me here today. I'm going to talk mainly about our experience of virtual assessment centres and our microplacements programme for you. To give you a little bit of context about City, City is a multi-faculty university. We've got a diverse student body, a number of students who commute from over an hour away, particularly at undergraduate level. We're very fortunate at City because the institution takes employability very seriously and has invested significantly in supporting students in their progression once they leave us. You might be interested to know that in Careers and Employability, we're a team of 30. And we have approximately 4 people at the moment who work on our microplacements programme. We've got 2 who are completely dedicated. That's due to grow significantly over the next couple of years as we scale up the scheme within the institution. The microplacements programme is a social mobility initiative which aims to place selective students, many of whom are from underrepresented backgrounds, in short-term career exploration opportunities. So for many, it's their first step into a professional role. This year, it's a 15-credit module for the first time, so we have it fully embedded into the curriculum. Next slide, please. So to give you an overview of our process, we start marketing and getting expressions of interest in October, and we have about 600 to 700 students who show interest in participating in the programme. We run a number of workshops, those have all been run remotely to introduce students to the scheme. And then we get written applications. At that stage, we're looking at about 350 applications, which we whittle down to 250, who then do a recorded interview and an assessment centre. So back in the old days, we would do face-to-face interviews. That was pretty labour intensive and required a lot of logistical planning in terms of finding room, finding staff at particular times to run these interviews and coordinating the timetable. COVID forced us to use Interview Stream, which was software we already had, and it's been absolutely wonderful because it means the students can pre-record the interviews, they can submit it assessors can review those interviews at their leisure and feedback to students. So in terms of the future and where we might head, I don't think we will go back to face-to-face interviews. And as John was talking about in his previous presentation, employers are already using this form of selection really across the board. So what we're doing is preparing our students for that virtual assessment, virtual performance. We then run our assessment centres in November. Those used to be face-to-face. Again, very resource intensive in terms of logistical planning. We, of course, have had to move those online, and we've already been able to see benefits, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a second. We then go on to various support post-assessment centre, both for those students who've been successful, but also those students who haven't quite made it through to the standard that they need to be. We're limited because we're limited with the number of placements we provide, which is approximately 160 per year. But as I mentioned, that's going to scale up. What's really important to know is that we provide feedback and support at every stage. So even for those students who aren't successful, they have a full employability learning experience. Next slide, please. So what did we do in terms of the virtual assessment centre? We worked very closely with Gradcore, who were providing the service, to understand what the structure of the assessment would be, what it would look like, how our students would relate to it. It was very important to us, and this was one of the reasons why we worked very well with Gradcore, to ensure that there was no selection bias within the assessment centre and that none of our students from particular groups were disadvantaged. In addition, it was really important to us to run mock online assessment centres before they did the full experience, and we used Microsoft Teams to provide this. We had tech check sessions for the students to make sure that they were able to use the technology so that when they were performing on the day, there were no glitches that would impair their ability to perform. And in addition, we had the microplacements team around for the whole of the assessment centre, so that if students were experiencing problems, we had some support to walk them through. Why did we do it? Well, we had no choice. We had to do it remotely, but with every cloud, there's a silver lining. Students are going to face virtual selection methods in the future, so let's give them that experience now. There's a real technique to performing virtually. I think we're all still learning that. So providing students with these very rich online learning experience was really important for us. Using assessment centres as a tool, again, was important because students learn in an active way. And again, that's a lot deeper and a lot more powerful. And as I've already mentioned, it reduces a lot of the logistical issues that we might have looked at. And John mentioned how employers are also thinking, you know what, this is a lot more efficient than running these large scale face-to-face assessment centres. What did we have to take into account? Digital poverty. Not all students have access to strong broadband or good tech. And time zones, because some of our students didn't come to the UK this year, and so we had to make sure that students that were in China or overseas were able to attend the assessment centres at a time that wasn't the middle of the night for them. Next slide, please. So how did it all work in terms of the virtual internship experience? Well, last year in March, the beginning of March, we had 110 placements secured. More or less overnight, that fell to 20 because employers were working remotely. We don't know what to do. Within 8 weeks, we'd redesigned the project plan and got 70 remote internships secured. So in terms of the team, that was a massive achievement in very adverse circumstances. There was a lot of background prep that went into that, negotiating projects, redefining established projects, thinking about health and safety insurance within the remote context, and again, access to tech for the students to ensure that they could complete the tasks that the employers required. In terms of platforms, we use Microsoft Teams to keep in contact with our students all the way through. The employers used a variety of platforms, and in one case built a platform for the students to deliver their internship. For those students who weren't able to secure an internship, so the 40 plus from the 110, we ran virtual employability sessions with large employers. And again, we were able to do those remotely. We were able to set those up reasonably quickly. And I think the remote nature of those was a real advantage in this context. And then the other thing we did was partner with external providers for additional work-based learning experience, and one of those being Internships UK, who ran a massive scheme this summer to provide those students who were struggling to find experience with really good quality projects for their CVs. That's broadly my overview. Very happy to take questions in the discussion.
Thanks very much, Vanessa, and thank you also for introducing the concept of digital poverty and the digital divide. I'm sure we will come back to the challenges of that within the Q&A. But now if we could go to Ali Orr, please.
Thank you, Claire, and good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm going to say some quite similar things to Vanessa. I'm going to try and take a slightly different focus, but we've been on a really similar journey at Kingston. Just going to try and find the slides. So for those of you who don't know, Kingston is a suburb of London. So we're based in southwest London. We're a university of around 17,000 students. In my team, in the career service, I have around 17 equivalent full-time staff. So that works out at around 1 to 1,000 of all of our students. And if I think about our student-facing staff, it's probably something like one member of staff to 1,500 students. So why is tech so important to us in our context? Well, obviously, given that the reach and the scalability of our offer is really key, we can do so much more by smartly adopting technology to better reach a wider range of students and to scale up what we offer. Equally, accessibility is really key. We have a relatively similar student demographic to City. We have around 70% of our students are from underrepresented groups, groups who are traditionally underrepresented in UK higher education. Over half of our students are commuters and commute more than 50 minutes to the university each day, or at least did before the pandemic hit. So for a number of years, we've been thinking how we can better serve our commuter students and how we can use technology and different digital tools in order to make our services more accessible to them. Tech's also really inclusive, really important from an inclusivity perspective. It has the potential to reduce, if not eliminate, bias in processes. That's something we might want to come back to talking about. And I think all of those things feed into the user experience, both in terms of thinking about our students, but also in terms of thinking about how we work with external partners as well. And as our previous speakers have touched on, it's really key to how we're preparing our students for the world of work today, both in terms of recruitment processes, but also in terms of the way that working practices have shifted in the past year. So at Kingston, we launched a scheme last year, which is not dissimilar to the one that Vanessa has talked about. So I'm not going to go into great detail. Our audience was slightly different. So our focus was on our graduating students last year who were graduating in the summer, going out into a quite precarious labour market. So we wanted to give graduating students access to real work, to work experience. We also wanted to give them experience of online recruitment. So we launched an internship program. We had 400 applicants to the scheme, of whom 140 went through a virtual assessment centre with Gradcore. We ended up placing 80 graduates onto internships, and those internships took place in teams of 2 to 3, working with primarily local employers. So I'm going to play a short video now, I hope, and I wanted to share with you some of the perspectives from the staff and students who were involved in the programme. So fingers crossed you're able to hear this.
We decided the best thing that we could possibly do for our students at this time, due to the coronavirus, was to support people who are graduating this year. We know that the labour market is very adverse, and we really needed to give people that boost. Our students are extremely diverse. We've got a lot of students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. We really want to support them to build networks and build capital, and providing these internships would allow them to do that.
The assessment center was really challenging and very useful, also because it gave me an idea of what an assessment center online would look like.
I think the exercises were quite challenging, but also enjoyable because you're working with peers essentially.
For the last few years, I've done a lot of group projects, but they've all been with other engineers. It really brought in my view, and it also just was a good experience of kind of debating and learning from people with different backgrounds.
We knew that the demand would outstrip the supply, which it definitely did. We wanted to put them through a recruitment process that was reflective of real life, and that even if they didn't secure an internship, they would have a learning experience and give them a bit of a challenge.
It helped me identify my strengths and weaknesses within the challenges. So again, communicating effectively, quick to the point, identifying like the key points within the challenges. Again, my weakness would be my confidence in myself, to be talking about my ideas, expanding it more in the discussions. And again, another key takeaway is understanding how assessors are looking at you within these assessments.
Whilst this is obviously a paid opportunity, it's real opportunities, real work experience, it's in more of a safe environment than it would be with a company with many, many more applicants, most likely. Oftentimes, they won't even get a response from some employers when they've gone through a recruitment process, never mind feedback like what we're giving them.
I did a really good afternoon of training, which really taught us how to do the assessing professionally and our feedback. So having done the training, I was allocated students to assess, which was all very efficiently done. You could just go online and do those assessments and write feedback for the students. So it was either the group exercise or the presentation exercise. And at times I've had to give feedback, which I could see that things were difficult for them and that there was learning to be had there. But it was good to give positive developmental feedback before they go into their next recruitment situation. I think that could be will be really beneficial.
The communication between Gradcore and myself was excellent. Everything was very speedy. The whole process was very efficient generally, and having taken part in the assessment centre, being there and seeing what it ran like, I thought it ran very smoothly. You know, we had discussed perhaps we could run an assessment centre internally, but it was the best decision we've ever made was going with Gradcore and letting you guys do that, because you're the experts and you ran such a high quality experience for the students.
It was a really nice environment and welcoming, and I wouldn't say easy, but set up in a way to kind of help you feel confident in what you were doing instead of feeling kind of cornered.
It's a good opportunity to understand without going out and finding other people. It's a university that you are familiar with, understand. It's an amazing experience to do.
Everyone should attend this at least once to get this experience.
So yeah, I would say do it and do it.
you go. So I hope that gives you a sense of just how successful the program was, both from, I think, our staff perspective. It was a really great project to work on, and also the student and graduate feedback was incredibly positive. I think you can see from the graduates on that short clip how much confidence they took from the process, and confidence building, particularly with all of these new tech tools that actually many of our students weren't necessarily using 12 months ago, is really important. So I'm just going to end with some quick reflections and considerations on sort of where we are now. I think really for us it's been quite a paradigm shift in terms of, like, you know, these tech and digital tools from a should have to a must have pretty much overnight when we entered lockdown last year. Our approach has sort of evolved with that. We have many of the tools that Martin mentioned that are available on the market. But actually we find that we really need to introduce those to students through their curriculum. They need to be linked to assessment. They need to be engaging in those digital tools and see the value of that within their own study, to really engage in them more widely. So that's something that we're doing increasingly, and we're seeing the level of engagement increase as a result of that. Equally for us, digital disadvantage, digital poverty was a really key consideration. We ensured that all our graduates applying for the programme had access to the Digital Disadvantage Fund, which was a really big fund that we had institutionally to ensure that those who didn't have access to devices, who didn't have access to broadband, were able to make use of that. There are still really key challenges for many students in terms of having the space within their living arrangements to be able to engage on a level playing field, but we certainly do what we can. And then also, I think, just a note around sort of feedback, both from students and employers, about keeping it simple. There are some really great tools, there are some really advanced technologies out there, but actually simplicity is really key to engagement. So I think ask yourself whether actually you need all the bells and whistles that come with some of the tools, or whether actually you can do this through a Microsoft Teams link, and sort of keeping the barriers to engagement down. And then staff development, I think may have touched on that through the video, but it's really sort of laid bare to us how important sort of digital literacy, digital capabilities are essential to all the roles in our team. And that's only going to increase in the future. So I think it's causing us to think differently about the sorts of roles and the sorts of capabilities that are required within a service, and also the partnerships that we need to form with other parts of the university, working much more closely with IT than ever before, working much more closely with our technology enhanced learning team as well. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. A couple of questions coming through on the chat bar for you and for Vanessa. So I think I'll just attempt to package them into one and then ask Vanessa first to respond and then yourself. I think one question is around, does it work? Are you able to, do you have data that sort of shows how successful this is versus the older method? Is this something that you track, and are you able to compare that data? And a further question is, could you just go into more detail about what skills are assessed in a virtual assessment centre? And just the final question relating to that is this an area that universities are now investing more in, particularly in the UK, where student employability is becoming, graduate employability is becoming a metric that is being reported on? So Vanessa, can we come to you first on those?
Yeah, so sorry, what was the first one?
The first one was, does it work? And are you able to kind of see how effective this approach is compared to your old approach, or is it too early? Do you kind of monitor how many graduates have got roles and how long it's taken?
It's too early really to categorically say. So I've put in the chat that in the UK we have a lag indicator for graduate employability, which is 15 months after students graduate. So in terms of mapping those students who participated, say, in this particular programme or in any of our programmes, we won't be able to do that for these students until 2 years after they've left. So it's tricky in that way. In the UK, one of the things that we do, and again, this won't answer the fact, does it work for this particular intervention? But what we will do next year is each year we have something called careers registration, where students ask a number of questions about their career readiness, and all students are required to do that at enrolment. What we can do with that data is map on student interventions and see, right, how have these students progressed compared with the rest of their cohort, and we do that for our interventions every year. We do look at learning gain at the start and the end of any intervention that we have, and again, we would do it for the whole microplacements programme, and we're not quite at the end of that. But last year, certainly with the remote placements, we saw that there was definite progression in terms of what students had learned in terms of their employability from the beginning of the programme to the end. So a long-winded way of saying, yes, it does work, but sometimes the hard metrics are quite difficult to obtain.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. And just quickly, what skills, could you be more explicit about what skills you're measuring in the assessment centres?
So we're looking for the standard skills that any employer would be looking for: communication, teamwork, ability to process and analyse information. So, if you look at most skills lists, there's about 10 skills that employers are looking for, and we will assess for those.
And is this an area that universities are investing more in? Is this becoming obviously budgets are tight, but this would be an area of growth perhaps?
I think so. So I can speak for City, and recently City have agreed to invest significantly in employability, which I think really shows that they're behind supporting students in this. I think it is a growth area. It's a tough time for higher education, but employability is incredibly important, and it's even more important given the impact of COVID on our graduating cohorts for the next couple of years.
Okay, thanks very much, Vanessa. And Ali, can I come to you with the same questions for your reflections?
Yeah, I'll take that last question first. So in terms of investment, this is a really high priority area for Kingston at the moment, but actually in terms of spend, it's also a really difficult time to be investing. And while we within the service want to invest in a whole range of different solutions, we're also having to think across the whole institution about sort of taking teaching and learning online, and there's a lot of investment that's gone into that as well. So I think as things settle down, yes, we'll continue to see increased investment in our area as part of the overall share of spend, but actually over the last year it's been a really challenging and probably over the next few months too, it's been a really challenging time for the sector, and we're no exception to that. In terms of skills, I mean, Vanessa's answered that, but what I'd add is what's been great about the assessment centre process is the really detailed feedback on each component that students get, that graduates get, so that they're actually able to really take that feedback back and work on it and apply it to future recruitment processes that they go through. So really in-depth, really personalised feedback, which is where a lot of the added value comes. And then in terms of impact, largely anecdotal at this stage for the same reasons that Vanessa mentioned, but we have seen several of our graduate interns secure graduate roles as a direct result, either with the companies that they were working with or using their experience of the assessment process to land those roles. So we've got some, pretty close correlation there. And I'd say also just that wider engagement that we had by being able to offer this experience, we had a huge level of interest, which we then converted into engagement with our graduate support package. And we can build on that level of engagement, but we've seen unprecedented levels of engagement based on both the internship and the assessment centre experience that we put in. So that was really the sort of jewel in the crown of our graduate package, really.
And it seems from the comments in the chat bar that not many of the institutions that we have represented from around the region are using virtual assessment centres currently. Is it your sense that this is the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think as John said, there isn't really any going back. Certainly within the UK, we're hearing very strongly from employers that this is here to stay. It was already quite a big feature, but now I think, having realised all of the savings and efficiency savings and so on, and you know, the fact that certainly anecdotally they're still getting the level of quality and quantity of applications, so it's working for them. So we're also able to better support SMEs through this process. This is a really good scalable process to support recruitment into smaller businesses that might not have the wherewithal to do the sort of large scale online recruitment themselves.
Okay, thanks, Ali. And then Martin, just to bring you back in, this last question for you perhaps. How do you assess employability skills virtually, and what is the most effective way to do that? And is there a difference?
Well, in the process of adjusting to virtual delivery of assessments in both the recruitment context and an employability context, we had did a lot of thinking and looking at this. And actually, in a lot of senses, the sort of competency or graduate attribute frameworks that you might use for recruitment or employability development stay the same virtually. You still just need to think in terms of having, you know, a structured behavior framework that sits underneath a competency like teamwork or communication or resilience, and think about how you break that down into positive and negative behaviors, and then use things like assessments or video interviews or other activities, workshops, to give students and graduates the chance to demonstrate their skills, and then you can kind of evaluate them against that kind of framework. So the same sort of framework that you would use in a real life assessment centre, if you like, you can use in a virtual one. A lot of it translates across. There's perhaps some skills that we're seeing become more prominent because of virtual working, so people's ability to work self-supported, and how do you assess that as a competency, and resilience particularly, I think is clearly prominent right now in all sorts, and has been for some time, but I think increasingly so. So perhaps, you know, making sure that those kind of things are monitored, but they can all be assessed under those kind of frameworks in the same way that you would in a, you know, a traditional process, but just done virtually.
Great, thank you, Martin. And whilst we've been listening to Vanessa and Ali and having this discussion, our student volunteers have been busily working away in the breakout room. John, are our students ready to come back and complete the task? I think you might be on mute, John.
Thank you, Claire. That's definitely the strapline for 2020 and now early 2021, isn't it? You're on mute. Yes, they are ready. I believe they're coming back to us imminently. Probably got time for one more question if it's a quick one.
Well, there was a question, or rather a reflection from Ukraine, which was actually that you need to start by teaching employers how to use virtual assessment centres, and then after that provide the service to the students. And I wondered if you had some reflections on that, perhaps.
Well, interestingly, one of our clients was halfway through their process face-to-face, and then the pandemic hit. And so, yes, there is definitely a period of adjustment for recruiters, but I think, as we've sort of given the narrative across this presentation, most things actually in terms of assessment and decision making largely stay the same, except you don't have the logistical challenges of trying to find bookings for rooms, the travel logistics of getting business representatives to a certain location, all the associated catering, the costs of all of that are removed. And I think with those bits of encouragement, lots of businesses are now looking, maybe that they didn't necessarily have a virtual assessment offering, are now very much doing so. And they use universal technologies. Like, I don't think many people heard of Zoom prior to the pandemic, but a lot of our clients use Zoom, and also more recently Teams, because of the additional breakout room functionality, which is what basically underpins the inner workings of an assessment centre, that all the breakout rooms become assessment rooms or exercise rooms. And of course, the flexibility of the recordings and the assessment at distance are compelling for recruiters. And I really would recommend further research and investigation from the institutions present into these technologies, because if it hasn't come round yet, it soon will.
Thank you. And we do have one final question, but we can save that for the wrap up if our students are ready.
Okay. Yeah. I believe I've just sent a message, and Camilla and Zoe are bringing them back now. In fact, they're here. They're with us. So I need the students to sort of turn their cameras on, and I'll launch into the introduction of the task, if I may. Okay. So, good afternoon, and thank you for coming along to present to the panel. I look forward to hearing your presentation and will be taking some notes. I will then ask you a couple of questions afterwards. As time is tight, we may need to cut your presentation short should you overrun. Please begin your presentation whenever you are ready.
Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to take you on a trip to a small beach town in Croatia, Pula. This town, as we talked about in the problem statement, is suffers from the pollution. And in this presentation, we're going to be presenting a really cool business idea that can help solve the local problem in Pula, Croatia, and help local communities to turn the plastic waste into actually source of income. Our presentation will follow this structure. We're going to be talking more deeper about the problem, and then we're going to show about the exact solution that we came up with, and we're going to be ready to take the questions. So now I'm giving the floor to my friend who's going to present more about the problem itself. Anna, you're up.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the problem is that we're using too much plastic in our everyday life, and there are some disastrous statistics out there. For example, for nowadays, only 9% of our plastic use is recycled only. Rest goes to landfills and oceans. And scientists say that for 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So it's a huge problem because it influences not only this wildlife, but us also. It's biggest challenge we have now. So the problem is that we are using in our everyday life too much plastic. We are making too much waste, and we need somehow to change this with new ideas, with new things. So yeah, basically problem is waste, our consumed waste. And about the solution, my fellow group member will talk. So it was my 2 minutes.
Hello everyone, it is such an honor to talk about our idea here. My name is Maria, and our group came around one amazing solution that is, in my opinion, something that everyone will find cute, but also really creative and really helpful, and something that is really important to do in the times that Anna described are not so beautiful, considering the plastic waste. So the initiative that we are talking about will promote collecting the used plastic bags all around the city of Pula. It aims at a broader public and the local citizens, because we will go to the people directly and ask them to give us their used plastic bags that they don't need anymore. So beside the direct impact of the product that we will make and sell, we will also have a promotion of our action while we talk directly to the people during our action. So once collected, plastic plastic bags will be used for making new items. And these products are very, very diverse. And as you can see, some of the ideas on the shared screen, these are some accessorized clothing items, household elements, and so on. They're pretty chic, so to say, and they're really easy on the eye. So I think it will definitely gather people around once they see that something like this is possible to be made from their waste. With their unique look, we believe that they will find their way onto the selling market and that they will be sold easily. With the money saved and gained from the sales, we plan to have some kind of promotion that we will take online, since everything is happening online these days. We plan to put up Instagram page that will sell, but also promote our action, sell our products, but also promote our action out of the city of Pula. So once we gather the broader public, and we believe that we will have a great portion of people who will be interested in our business, we will use the monies gained to of course promote it further, but also to make our products more complex and more how to say innovative. Therefore, we will be using more and more plastic bags to make our products and sell them, and it's a perfect circle. But also, beside the direct product that you all see on your screens, we will have this kind of a campaign that will include the mentality of people and what they do with plastic bags. They will change their way of thinking, and once they see a plastic bag, they won't only see something to throw away or to use once they go shopping. They will also see something innovative and something creative that can be made even within their households, not only with our action, but within their households, with their children, or within some kind of kindergarten, schools, and etc. So we believe that something like this is not only creative, but also has a big impact on how we see plastic waste and what we do. I will give the floor to the next speaker, who will talk about other things that we talked in our breakthrough. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm and I'm at the marketing part of our product. Called it internship. We're creating a product to help reduce plastic waste for creating this. In fact, like a promotion, there's many products that will help you download plastic consumptions, but as Mohammed said, showed us, we are having produced bags. And these are, for example, if you forget to use the bags for pet waste disposal, many animal shelters will even take donations. And reusable produced bags can have a great benefits for both yourself and for the environment, of course. They can cut down on your plastic waste, benefits the health of your home and surrounding ecosystems. Reusable produced bags are made up of muslin, mesh, or other recyclable substances. These are, of course, eco-friendly, and these eco-friendly bags are washable and can be used many times over. And of course, it helps us to protect our ecosystem in general. And this is my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Describing our initiative in this sphere in reducing the pollution, I would also add up some information about the importance of this decision and this initiative, because the way we see it is that we not only reduce the plastic pollution locally, but we also play a huge role being a role model for other organizations and other, for example, groups of people in general, in order to have a better vision about the plastic pollution and how to get rid of it and how to improve the ecosystem of the earth, not in general. I mean the local meaning, but in the whole earth. Yeah, I mean this will also help organizations get the status of green, and which will also motivate them to help in investigate. I mean, investing in these projects, and also the organization we are proposing will also run a lot of campaigns with maybe, for example, with celebrities in order to reduce the waste and also to clean the the oceans, so that we would have an increased, wider audience and increased motivation for people and the audience in general. This will also help people to understand the benefit of recycling the plastic and create a vision to people who would hopefully will be more eco-friendly in the future.
Okay, in conclusion, according for all responses of my colleagues, according for the project, I just want to add that this project is aimed for eco-friendly societies around the world, and of course we want to create and open this eco shop where we can decide several aspects. One of them is about, of course, how to recycle the plastic. Another one aspect is how to invite people with disabilities who will just make these kind of bags. And in this way, I think that it will be a very good project of around the world, because we are all from different countries, and of course we can make it online. And I just want to say that we want to make some networking, making some training sessions of inviting people around the world, and to say them that it's a challenge to all of you to make it world better, to recycle the plastic, of course, and to join this kind of direction, how to make this planet more clear, and of course hope that this project will invite a lot of people, and a lot of people from different ages will change their minds and will join to us, to our this direction. Thank you so much, and hope that we can make it world better.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, that's the end of your presentation delivery time. I've now got a couple of questions, if I may. And the first of those is this. If you could only fund or implement one of your ideas, which would it be and why?
Can I answer on this question?
Anyone can answer.
Yeah, for me, the best thing will be to invest to promote this zero waste lifestyle, because nowadays in this world products are created for customers, So what you're choosing during what you're buying, when you're buying, it makes a whole difference for businesses to look to you, and somehow they will try to suit you with your wishes. So if you as a customer, you have responsibility that this is waste and this is problem and this is harm, so the businesses will look after for your needs, and this will make difference, I think.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you very much then, team. That was absolutely fantastic. I'd invite the delegation present just to show their appreciation virtually for that presentation. That was absolutely brilliant given the context in which you were asked to perform. So my heartfelt thanks for that presentation. That was excellent. I will show my appreciation the traditional way, albeit you probably can't hear the round of applause that I would wish you could. That was excellent. I think we're now going to just get some reflections from yourselves as to how you found it, and in particular the sort of virtual context. And Claire, have you got any particular question you'd like me to ask, or would you got any questions you'd like to ask yourselves?
Well, I'd love to hear the students' reflection of how that went for them and how they found the experience. I think you did an absolutely amazing job in a really short time scale. Loved the kind of creativity, loved the owl bag. It would be really good to hear your reflections. And for the everyone on the call, any questions you have, please do put them in the chat bar.
Okay, guys, what I'd invite you to think about is what do you think went particularly well just then?
If I can start,
Sure.
I think we were really lucky to have Anna in our team, who actually runs a zero waste store in Georgia. So she helped with kind of coming up with this cool idea. And we did a lot of, not a lot, but some research given the strict time limit on the internet to try and find other existing initiatives and alternative solutions to this problem that's being done in different countries. So I say it was what really worked out well in our team was the teamwork. We all were able to put in our efforts to come up with the solution, find all the gaps that we could at the moment, and fill that with inputs and knowledge. So I want to thank all of our teammates for that. If we had more time and if we knew what the test would be beforehand, would be more prepared and actually come up with a full presentation and be able to present our main talking points on the slides, which I think would help to more easily understand our exact solution, and it would also have time to more focus on the market side and really think about the sales and marketing channels that we would use for this eco shop. But it's a great idea. Why not? We can do it in real life, because I think most beaches and water areas are actually polluted. So this could be a working idea, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. Given you had 30 minutes, it was an amazingly efficient use of time. Was it stressful? Did you feel under stress, or was it enjoyable, or did it feel a bit like an exam?
It was stressful. I was nervous a little, but also we were kind of prepared too. In that time that we had, we were prepared, so not so stressful, but a little stressful. I don't know about the rest of the guys though.
Anyone else want to share what they felt went well?
Actually, I want to say that all the group members, we have some kind of common sense that we all knew that it was problem. We all knew that it was big deal, and so it was easier for us to somehow present what we had in mind. Of course, Mohammed already told you that if we knew it forwardly, what was the topic, we would be better prepared. But for now, all of us had this kind of, we all know that it's a huge problem, and it was easier to work on it because of that.
Great. Okay, Maria.
Yeah, sure.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, cool. I think for me the biggest challenge was the fact that we didn't know each other, and so I didn't know what the methods of working in a group were for each of them, and I was panicking all the time while thinking that maybe someone will go without saying what they don't like about our idea, since the time was really short. I was afraid that someone would just won't be satisfied with the idea we came up with, and we had to react quickly. And therefore, I'm just really happy that everyone is pretty satisfied and likes the idea enough to present it this well. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it more than I was stressed. That was the biggest point of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Maria.
Can I share?
Yes, please, Maya.
Sure. I agree that with my colleagues and friends before we saw each other, but it was our first time to make some kind of challenge and to think about this idea. And I just want to say that it was some kind of moments, nervous moments for me, because it's not like exam, but I was nervous for my colleagues and partners because I'm responsible for that, mostly because of my answer. It was very important to not only for me, but all of us. And so I think that when you are just saying your speech, or you will be like a speaker, you are independent and you are responsible only on yourself. But when you are working in a team, it's very good and very hard work to work in it and to create some kind of ideas. And because we have a lot of ideas, and we should only concentrate only on one. And I think that we did it. I'm very happy to know all of you guys. Thank you so much.
And what was your strategy for managing that? Because it's a very short bit of time. You had to come up with the idea, then you had to think how it was going to be presented, then you had to divide who was going to present which bit. What was the kind of, did you do a bit of time planning before you started the session? How did you sort of approach that?
Before anyone answers, I just wanted to pick up a question from Summer that was in the chat box, but also compliment Claire on that question. So because time is tight in this session, we do have some reflection or reflective questions as part of the assessment. And Claire, your question is exactly one of those. So we invite students to reflect on how they manage themselves within that time frame, and also articulate the decision making that happened under the time constraint and under the pressure of the situation. And that's definitely one of the things that we look to identify in the assessment, which leads me on to Summer's question, which is how would we assess the presentation? So typically, under every exercise you do at Assessment Centre, 3 or 4 competencies may be assessed. And under each of those competencies, there may be between 8 and 10 positive and negative indicators of those competencies. So, for example, in this one, we're looking for people who are driven to contribute. And so the quality and depth of their section would be I guess, examined under that with various indicators around that. Also, the duration and awareness of the time constraint each of them had would be also assessed, as well as the quality of the idea that they put across, as well as their contribution to the follow-up questions. So there's quite a few bits of behaviour exhibited within the presentation, alongside obviously the presentation itself. And so I guess that's an eye-opener for you guys as students, but I also wanted to inform the delegates about how this would be assessed as well. And I invite you, Maria, now just to answer that question, I suppose, and say, how did you manage the task and how did you decide who said what?
Yeah, I think everyone in the group will agree with me when I say that we improvised more than we planned. And I think since we didn't know each other, since we didn't know the topic beforehand, it was the only way to go. And we just used the knowledge that we had, a little bit of research that we had time for, and just smashed it all together and hoped for the best. But I think each of the individuals in our group had a lot of things to offer, a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, and a lot of just the viewpoints about this topic. So therefore, it was easy to work when everyone is so opinionated and everyone is so eager to talk and eager to evolve. And I think the teamwork was the best part of the time management, because we didn't we let everyone talk, and we gave each other space to present the ideas, to present what we thought about the presented idea, and etc. So I think it was teamwork that helped us manage the time limit, since it was really short. And I think I think we did the best with what we had at the moment. I hope this answered the question.
Yes, I would say it did. I just have to compliment you once again, because the delegation might not all realise some of you have got your country behind your name, so people appreciate that you're not just sort of digitally dispersed, you're also internationally dispersed, and English is your second language. And I'm completely in awe of all of you for your contributions and performance during that presentation. And just one more thing I'd like to add about the topic of the presentation. We deliberately chose something that everyone would have an angle on, and that is of interest to young people. And so that's why hopefully that triggered you to have opinions on it. I was delighted to focus on one particular beach in Croatia, Pula in Croatia, that I now want to visit and perhaps buy one of the items that you might sell me, recycle from the plastic waste that's washed up. But we deliberately chose something that wouldn't necessarily lend itself to any individual discipline that might be taught at university, and that is a universally accessible topic, and hopefully that enabled you all to feel able to contribute and not reliant upon any pre-existing knowledge or information. I'd invite your comments on that as well.
Was this a normal length of time, John? Would it normally be longer than this? Was it just and if it was not virtual but in real life, would the students have had longer? Is this a very condensed exercise?
This is exactly what we would do. So 30 minutes of preparation time, approximately 15 minutes as a framework of delivery time, and then some follow-up questions. The guys actually produced 11 minutes of presentation within their 15 minutes. And again, just to compliment you on that, that is definitely, I would say, in the green zone of being excellent performance. Just to repeat the context that you're operating in, that's absolutely outstanding to do that. And it was all good stuff. I thought I was taking notes almost by habit of what you were all saying, and it felt to me like there was a story to tell. And despite the conditions and the situation, you've come through that. So displaying that resilience we spoke about earlier in bucket loads.
Great. Well, we've got 5 minutes left of our allotted time today, so I think I'd just like to move to closing remarks and go back to our panel of speakers and ask Vanessa and Ali and Martin for their final reflections, but also ask them the one question that we didn't have time for in the Q&A session, which is, in this kind of COVID-19 context, what are the 3 most essential graduate skills? If you could quickly wrap that one up too in your closing comments. And Martin, can we come to you first?
Yes, thank you. Well, it's been really good to be here with everyone today. I've really enjoyed seeing the students deliver on that presentation at short notice, and having not met each other before, it's fantastic. So thank you. And hopefully for those of you here from universities, that gave you an idea of how you can use a low or no cost platform like Teams to deliver this kind of exercise. So it's something relatively achievable and inexpensive to do this in kind of as part of your employability delivery. In terms of 3 skills, I think there's lots contending for it, but I would say resilience is a really big thing at the moment. I think self-efficacy, so people's ability to sense that they can get things done and to make sure they get things done, particularly when they're often working remotely and aren't necessarily driven by the team around them. And then finally, I would say also a kind of a new set, I guess, of, I think emotional intelligence would be my 3rd one, which is partly emotional intelligence, because it's a lot harder to read how people are feeling and being through screens, which is all we have of people at the moment. So I think we almost need to all tune our emotional intelligence up, and graduates need to do that too, in terms of being able to be really effective in their work.
Thank you. And then Vanessa, over to you.
In terms of the 3 skills, broadly reflect what Martin says, but I would say communication for me is still up there, and being able to communicate on multiple platforms effectively. And as Martin says, that emotional intelligence, rapport building. Self-management, so being able to get up in the morning and deliver what you need to deliver when you're on your own. And digital literacy, being able to use all the tech without having a fabulous IT department to come and support you when you have a problem. So those would be my 3 final reflections. I would say that tech really helps in scaling up. So to give you an idea, we've just invested in CV software, which will allow all students to get advice on their CV 24/7. So that's just one example of how we can use tech to serve a lot more students. And then by the time they come to see us individually, they're in a much better place in terms of their employability skills and knowledge.
Thank you, Vanessa. And Ali, over to you.
Thank you. So in terms of the skills, I'll just, being the last one to go, obviously just crossing out everything that Martin and Vanessa said, I don't really have anything to add. I think you combine those and you've really got the list of key skills. In terms of final reflections, and my son has just walked in the room, which is probably one of those things that we actually have to learn to juggle these days. Not to be afraid to really just take a leap of faith and go for it in terms of, exploring the use of technology. Not everything will go well, that's life, and you'll learn from that along the way. So there we go, clutter, and really there is so much benefit, I think, from giving students these experiences which reflect the reality of the situation we're now in.
Great, thank you, Ali. So it just leaves me to give a massive thank you to our partners and panelists for your time today. A huge thank you to our students, and wish you every success in your future employability and careers. And a big thank you to all our attendees from all those different countries. I hope you found it valuable and useful. I hope you've got some practical experience that you can take away and implement. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.